who married this Albert Smith, the Smith daughters just loved her because she was actually more of a mother to them than their real mother. Their mother had been sick all the time. And so when grandmother came over as a widow, they took her in and she took care of the family, and then Mrs. Smith died and he married her. And this letter from one of the girls tells about her and high praises about her. In fact, she was a kind of a prophetess.
Matthias Hansen Andresen. As a young man on a mission in Denmark. And this is Matthias at a later age. And this is Johanna that Niles was talking about, his grandmother, great-grandmother. And this is Johanna and Matthias in their middle age. And this is them in front of a rock home that he built in Salina, and he built lots of the rock homes and churches that you see in the area. On Vivian's mother's side now, this is William G. Sr., her great-great-grandfather, and his family, and his wife, Mary Ann Walson, and Mary Ann and William Sr. at a later date. This is William G. Jr. and his wife, Sophia, Anna Sophia, mother of Ruby Olson, Vivian's mother. So this is her grandfather and grandmother and their family. This is Eric Olson, who raised stallions and is the father of Sophia Olson. And this is Eric and his wife, Inga Marie Casperson, and their children. And this is Eric and Inga Marie. Eric and Inger again. And that is Olga, Cecilia, and her mother Inga, and I always go left to right in the photographs, and we believe this is Olga's family. This is a picture at Easter time at Redmond Lake in 1925, and that's Vivian and her sister Bonnie with their backs to us. Ruby and Bessie in the middle, and that's her aunt Winona and Uncle Eldred. And of course that's Ruby, Bessie, and Niles and Torval enjoying their picnic at Redmond Lake. This is William G. Jr. in the 1870s, a young picture of Vivian's grandfather. This was a wife that he had in England that we can't find a name on. Nobody seems to know her name. And this is Rita Olson, Ruby's sister. And this is Torval again at a young age on his white horse. And this is Torval at age 26, about the time he married Vivian's mother Ruby here, who is 18 in this picture. And this is Ruby and Torval and Bessie, the child, in front of their Salina home in Salina, Utah. A World War I postcard sent from Vivian's uncle Tony G., Paris, France, 1918. Eldred Murphy driving his team of horses with the G brothers and Torval Andresen. This is McHugh, Vivian's cousin, Vivian, Bessie, Dixie, their cousin, Niles and Bonnie, her brother and sister. This is 1921 with Torval and his steam threshing machine and helpers. He had the only thresher in the area. I don't know that.
Much older. Drive through the two cities. When you drive through Manti, you'll see all the old rock houses and buildings. Some of them my grandfather built, just like he built his home, and he built this Presbyterian church up here, and he built a chapel here in town, because he was trained to be a skilled stonemason. And that's the reason he named my father Torvald, because Thorwaldsen was a great Danish sculptor, and he respected and revered Thorwaldsen. I have a ball.
So do you remember your grandfather?
Oh, I was 12 when he died.
Now, he was a stonemason, right? And he built...
Well, he had many. He built a lot of buildings, but he also he bought and sold farm machinery, which my dad assembled. And that was early days of farm machinery in this area. And my dad, not being able to play ball and do the other things, from the time he was a little kid on...
When did he get polio?
When he was just learning to walk.
Oh, that young, huh?
He was
about
2 or less. He was learning to walk, and he got polio, and so his left leg was paralyzed with the hip down. It was just like kind of a rope. And he didn't get he'd hobble around. He didn't get his first pair of crutches until he was about 10, so that he could really get around decent. But,
he went that long without crutches?
He'd have a cane or a stick that he'd hobble around with. But was about 16, 17, he owned his own thrashing machine. A big steam JIK...
16, 17?
Uh-huh. He owned his own JIK steam thrashing machine. And again, he worked that same machine until 1927, that same big old steam engine. In 27, he bought his first GIK gas engine. And he gradually developed to the point where he did custom work. He plowed for the farmers. He had one of the first hay balers in town. He baled hay for the farmers. He had a hammer mill that he'd go around to their yards in the winter and chop up the grain to feed to the cattle. His religion was work. He loved to work.
These pictures were all taken in the 1930s, I believe. And Torvald in front of the shearing sheds, digging a ditch. This is Bessie on the right and Niles as a baby. And that's Niles, Bessie, Vivian, and Bonnie going left to right again. And this is Ruby as a baby. Notice the unique baby carriage. Vivian as a young girl. At 1929, I'm guessing. That's Niles in 1922. Bonnie. Vivian's mother, Ruby, in 1922. And her older sister, Bessie. Her younger sister, Bonnie. And Vivian in 1930, these pictures are. That's Niles. And Bessie. And Bonnie, just younger than Vivian. And the youngest of the family, Kay.
Equipment and boat and motor and stuff at Fish Lake. One summer, we went to Fish Lake 17 times, so you know how much you love fishing. And that was when the road to Fish Lake, you cross the Kishirm Reservoir, and there's an old dugway that wind around like this to get up there. It was a dugway, and you had to chug along. And he wasn't happy with this Model T Ford because it didn't do enough, so he put an overhead valve in it, and then he put ethyl in the gas tank so it'll get it more pep and go. So for a couple of years during the summer, he ran a merry-go-round.
There's a merry-go-round here?
It would go from town to town in this area. And he ran that merry-go-round. And that's how he met my mother. So he was running this merry-go-round, and my mother and some of her friends came to the merry-go-round, and he gave her a free pass to ride the merry-go-round.
In Salina, Utah. This picture was taken in 1924 at Fish Lake. Torval with his friends Harry and Carl Nielsen. This is Inga Marie Casperson in her early 80s. And Vivian's grandmother, Sophia G., in her later years. Here she is in her 80s, about 84 years old in 1960. And this is Bill Brown, Waldo G., Zelda, and Barbara Brown. Torval and Ruby again. This is her younger sister Bonnie, one of her best friends Willie, and a cousin Darlene, going left to right again. Vivian's sister Bessie's husband Richard Blood and his son Richard Jr. And this is Ruby Andresen at the age of 39. The oldest child, Bessie, at age 20. Niles at age 17. Vivian at age 15, the middle child. Bonnie at age 13. And the baby of the family, Kay, at age 6. North Sevier High School principal, Stina Scorp. This is Vivian and her first husband, Burke Stevenson, father of her first child, Robert, and Bonnie, Niles, Ruby, Kay, Torval, and Richard Blood Jr. Vivian's first son, Robert Santos, born April 18, 1937. His cousin Richard Blood Jr. helped holding him with Vivian, and another baby picture of Bob. And Richard Jr. again holding Bob. We've gone through most of the 1930 slides now, and we'll show you a couple of photos from Frank, Vivian's second husband, his first truck, and in Parowan picking peas in 1930s. Sophia, Ruby, Bessie, and Inga Marie Olsen. This is Vivian and Bob. Bob again on a blanket. And Bob with some chickens. Torval in his garden. I say he raised beautiful gardens, no weeds. Ruby and Torval. Okay, next we will be entering into the 40s and showing you some pictures of Vivian's second husband, Frank Augustus Santos, who came here from the Azores as a young boy. This is Vivian in 1942 when she met Frank. This is Frank in 1942. And double picture of them about the time that they met and were married shortly after. Again, this is Vivian in the early 1940s. Frank with a young colt. Vivian. Frank. Frank with one of his race horses. And Vivian. This is her grandmother, Sophia G. Aunt Zelda Brown with Julie and Rosalind. Ruby holding Julie, Vivian's second child. Julie was born in late January 1940. And these are some pictures of Julie when she was young. You'll see Rosalind with Julie quite a bit in the pictures. They were born around the same time. And Richard Jr., 12, Bessie, 33, Ruby, 52, and Sophia, 71. They were the oldest of their families in this picture. This is Bob on a tricycle. Bob. Oh, how Bob loved his chickens. That's Vivian holding Julie. This is a group picture with Vivian and Frank, Julie and Rosalind as babies, Torval and Bob, Ruby and Ross, Niles, Alta, and Anthony. Anthony is Niles and Alta's oldest. Ruby is holding Ross. That's Frank with Rosalind and Julie. And Bob holding his little sister, Julie. The cousins, Larry Blood, Robert Santos, Alan Brown, and Richard Blood Jr., left to right. Another picture of the old threshing machine. Frank and Julie. And that's Bob, Julie, and Rosalind. Rosalind's their first cousin. Julie, at about age 4. And that's Julie, Rosalind, Ross, Robert, and Scott. And that's Robert and Julie. Julie. Bob and Julie with a puppy. And that's Julie and Rosalind. Bob, Julie, Rosalind, and Ross. Bonnie's second child is Ross. Ross and Rosalind are brother and sister. Ruby holding Julie, Kay, Bessie, Richard Jr., Bonnie, Winona, Bob, Zola, Zelda, and Rosalind, and Alan. And some of the kids in front of the Bumgardner's basement house that they lived in. It's Bob, Julie, Rosalind, and Ross. Ruby and Bob. Julie, Rosalind, Ross, Bob, and their dog Shep. Bob and his dog Shep. Bonnie, Vivian, Alta, Niles, Ruby, Kay, and Torval. Frank, Vivian and Julie, Ruby, Niles, Alta, Bonnie, Kay, and Bessie, and the children in front are Bob, Larry, Richard, and Rosalind. Bob and his dogs. Bob and Julie. Playing in the water in the mountains. Bob and Julie. Bob, what are you going to do with that axe? And there's Julie sitting in an old wash tub. Ruby with Bob and Julie in the mountains. Julie and her doll. This is Scott Torval Santos, who was born on June 13th, 1943, Vivian's third child, and that's Vivian holding Scott. Frank and Scott. Scott and Julie. Larry, Richard Jr., Bob, Ross, Rosalind, Julie, Anthony, Scott, Rodney, and Aaron, the babies. Bob, Frank, Scott, Julie. Bob, Vivian, her best friend Willie Scott, who Scott was named after, Ruby, holding Scott, and Julie. Scott, Julie, Shep, and Bob. Frank, Scott, and Vivian. Julie, Ross, Ruby, Rosalind, Bob, Scott, and Vivian. Scott, Scott and Rodney on the tricycle. Scott and Amiga and her colt. Scott riding Amiga. Scott, Julie, and Bob on Amiga. Scott, notice the slingshot. Scott at about 6 years old. Bob and Julie. Julie at about 4 years old. The Christensen kids and Julie. The Christensens were their neighbors. Julie with the animals. Hay time, Frank and the kids on the truck. Frank doing his labor in the hay. Frank's sons by his first marriage in California, Albert on the left and Frank Jr. on the right. They both lived in California. This is Albert's father-in-law, Axel, who came to Utah often to go hunting with Frank. One of the bucks that Frank shot. And this is Frank with his racehorse, Estrella, jockey Poncho, trainer Clarence House. Bob is driving the tractor in the hay, and that's Frank Jr. leaning against the hay baler. Frank and his son Frank. Bob. One of Frank's friends on his Caterpillar. In the harvest, it looks like potatoes. We are now entering into the 1950s when Eugenia Lou Santos was born. She was born November 3rd, 1951. We call her Jenny Lou, and this is a shot of her as a baby in 1951. Frank holding Jenny Lou. The picture's not very good, as you can tell. Jenny Lou. Jenny Lou at 4 years old. About the same age in this picture, and you'll notice that Scott is on the other end of the rope that's holding the calf. Scott at Fish Lake with his fish. Scott and Rodney with their slingshot. Rodney is Bonnie's third child. There's Rodney, Ross, Scott, and Julie. A group picture with Joe, Bonnie, Vivian, Julie, Robert holding his son Robin, his wife Oma, Ruby, and Jenny Lou. This was in about 1958, Scott and Ross laying on the grass. Ross, Anthony and Aaron, Rodney and Scott. Rodney, Ross, Anthony, Aaron, and Scott. Vivian with her brother Niles and sister Bonnie. 1953. Potato harvest. Julie, Jenny Lou, Vivian, Frank, and Bob.
There once was a farmer who took a young miss in back of the barn where he gave her a lecture on horses and chickens and eggs and told her that
Jenny Lou,
had such
Julie,
beautiful
Vivian,
manners that
Bob,
suited
and
a
Frank.
girl of her charms, a girl that he wanted to take in his washing and ironing and
Bob and Oma's wedding pictures.
they could get married and raise
Bob and Oma were high school sweethearts at Monroe High School.
sweet
and were married shortly after she graduated. They were married in 1957. Bob at the Sands Hotel, where he and Oma managed the hotel to make a living while he went to college there and played basketball for Dixie. Bob and his first son, Robin. Julie, Scott, Rodney, and Ross. Ruby and Torval. Ruby and Torval Holden, Robin. The 5-generation pictures, Vivian, Ruby, Sophia, Robert, and his son Robin, who was born in 1957. This is Scott on his first elk hunt. He said it's the one and only elk he ever got. His father along on the hunt, Frank. Their lunch break with some friends, the Wagners. Scott and Willie Wagner. Kay, Bonnie, Vivian, and Bessie, and Doug and Jimmy, Kay's 2 sons. The 4 sisters, Kay, Bonnie, Vivian, and Bessie. Kay, Bonnie, and Vivian. Kay with her daughter Teresa. Bessie with her first grandchild, Elizabeth, Richard Jr.'s first daughter. Teresa, Kay, Doug and Jimmy, Vivian and Jenny Lou, Ruby and Bonnie with her granddaughter, Brenda. Julie and Bessie. Next, we will be looking at some pictures when Frank went back to the Azores, and I'm going to read you a newspaper article that was in the Richfield Reaper at that time. Rancher starts journey to the boyhood home. The long journey home from the red hills of southern Utah to the island of Fayal off the coast of Portugal began Thursday for Frank Santos, Monroe rancher, when he boarded an airplane at Salt Lake City Airport en route to his boyhood home in the Azores. 42 years ago last April, Mr. Santos said goodbye to his family to seek his fortune in the United States with an uncle, one of the California 49ers, who told of the wealth in the United States while on a visit to his old home. Although his family was well-to-do, the boy yearned to see his wealth of the country unbounded by the sea, where a man could walk for days without seeing the ocean, and where the mountains rose high above the plains. Out to get his citizenship in May of 1950 before he made his travel back to his homeland in the Azores. You can see when he first came to America, he came on the ship SS Madonna. This is Frank at about 17 years of age. And next will be a picture of his family after he left. This is the certificate of citizenship that Frank received in 1950. In the family portrait coming up next, Frank will not be in it because he'd left home by then, and a younger brother, Tony, is not born yet, the last of the family. Back row is Claudina, Joe, Eugenia, Manuel, an adopted nephew, his mother Maria, holding Maria Eugenia, his father Augusta, holding Blarmina. This is the family windmill that they used to mill their grain. And the White Rock Castello Bronco, White Castle Rock, Frank's hometown, is named for. It's Joe, Frank, and Tony with their mother, Maria. Frank's family in front of their family home. Frank is in the middle. And some of the family at the back of the home. This is Frank and his sister Maria, or Mary, which they call her. The only one of his family that came to Utah to visit him. And the family dressed in their costumes for a celebration. Their native dress. Frank in the middle holding the little guitar-like instrument with his family. Some of the ladies doing the laundry. That's Blarmina and Mary, getting all the dirt out of the clothes. And plowing the fields. And Manuel, the adopted nephew, carved some toy plows like they used, and Frank brought them home. And this is a few pictures of the toys that Frank brought back with him from the Azores on his 1951 visit. These are actual replicas of what they were using at the time, and there's some oxen harness. There's a picture of them out plowing in the field again with the oxen. And this is Manuel, who carved the toys with Blarmina's family. And this is them, Frank with his brothers and brother-in-law eating a pig ready to slaughter. Frank, Mary, and his mother, Maria. Some of his family in their old whaling boat. They say the captain is the one that gets to wear the golden earring when they go out whaling. And the family fishing boat. And just some photos of Frank in different areas of the Azores when he visited. Frank sent home to the family while he was in the Azores. You can see there, March 13th, 1951, Mrs. Frank Santos. Card he sent to Vivian's parents. This is a newspaper clipping of some of the family that took him in after he ran away from his uncle, who treated him like a slave, was supposed to give him an education, and just worked him day and night, and so he ran away, and these people, the Chevriers, took him in and helped him until he could get out on his own. And this is why we have this clipping in here. This is his oldest son, Albert, and Frank Jr., who was born in California with his first marriage and first wife. He was married to Angelina Rosa de Silva before leaving her and coming to Utah in the 1930s. His son Frank Jr. was an excellent singer, and when he was a young boy he used to sing on the radio. And this is an old newspaper clipping in 1930s of him being announced to sing on the radio. And Frank moved to Parowan after leaving California in 1936, and this is a picture of them picking some peas that he raised there. And this is his first truck, 1932. And with one of his racehorses. This is a soil conservation award that Frank received after improving the land in Annabelle, Utah. And that's Jake Peterson and a representative from Goodyear giving this award to Frank. And this is what the award looks like. Outstanding accomplishment in soil conservation. And this is an old camera that belongs to the family that took some of the photographs that you have seen. And this is Scott out of high school entering the military in 1961. And next we will be going into the 1960s. After that we will also be showing you some of Julie's home movies that she took of the family in the 60s and 70s. Scott in 1961 at Lackland Air Force Base, Texas. Scott in Eielson, Alaska, receiving his stripes in the mid-1960s. This is the newspaper article when he entered the Air Force. Some pictures he sent home to his mother, January 1962, dressed up in his uniform. And Scott on the left with a friend just outside the barracks. Scott on a motorcycle. This was a job that he had at Whiting Motors, and the picture's not too good, it's been kind of torn, but this is Scott just before he graduated from high school, age about 17. This is a family portrait of Frank and Vivian with Jenny Lou in the 1960s. 65 about. This is Grandma Sophia holding Bob's second son, Danny, and Robin. Danny was born in 1960. This is a 1966 newspaper article about Frank and sugar beets. This is Torval and Ruby just before Torval passed away in 1962. And that's Julie with her grandfather, Torval. It's Torval in his casket. And this is his half-brother, Pete. Some of the family. At the gravesite, you can see Rodney in his Navy uniform. Scott is next to him and would be in his Air Force uniform that they'd come home from the military for their grandfather's funeral. You can see Bob and Oma and Ruby and Bonnie and Alta and Uncle Joe, Richard and Bessie. There you can see Scott on the left and Rodney on the right in their uniforms. Jody. Frank on his farm haul tractor. He was always happiest when he was out working. This is Tamarack, a Galloway registered bull that he drove to Montana to pick up. Getting the bull loaded to bring home to Utah. And some of the cattle he raised from Tamarack. That was the G brothers. Didn't leave it on long enough. And this is Scott when he was in California and he's at his brother Frank Jr.'s home and Frank's wife Adele's. He also worked in California back in the 60s. This is Julie, Vivian, and Jenny Lou. Vivian and her two girls. Scott, Sean, and Barbara. Sean is Barbara's son by a previous marriage. Julie, Vivian, and Jenny Lou again. This is Bob's family. It's not a very clear picture, but we put it in anyway. This is Scott. Downtown Richfield. Just thought this was an interesting shot of what it used to look like in Richfield. Frank cleaning his Jeep. And in front of his truck with his camper shell on top. Julie, Vivian, Frank, Ruby, Bob, Oma, Danny, Jenny Lou, and Scott with Robin's back towards us. Vivian's 4 children, Jenny Lou, Scott, Julie, and Bob. Scott. Joe Nick with his grandfather Frank. Vivian and Jenny Lou. Jenny Lou. The Bumgarner family. That's Bonnie and her husband Joe with Ross, Rosalind, and Rodney. Julie in California, where she lived for some time. Vivian, Julie's second husband Ross, Hatch, and Jenny Lou with Pedro. Vivian and Ross. Jenny Lou with her first husband John Powell. This is the well that was on the Annabelle Ranch. Jenny Lou with roses that John sent to her. John and Jenny Lou at her senior prom. Cy and Danny. These are Bob and Alma's children. Alma and Christine. Cy, Bob's third oldest. That's Danny chasing the lambs with Julie. Bob's second oldest. Robin being the oldest. Julie and Cy with the lamb. Cy. This is Julie riding a bike. We're at Vivian and Frank's home in Richfield. Some of the kids. Jenny Lou checking on the water. Frank with his cattle. And her son Tony, the one that sent the postcard in 1918, never married. They're at her son Garney's home, Garney and Evelyn's, for a family get-together, where you'll see a lot of the family that was in California at that time. There's Garney, and Julie thought this was a neighbor boy that was over visiting. Garney and Evelyn didn't have any children. We're inside now with Sophia and Bessie, Niles, Ruby, Vivian's mother. Sophia is her mother. Alta. And some of the kids. That's Ross Hatch, Julie's second husband. Sophia. Bessie, Niles, Ruby, Ross, Hatch, Garney and Evelyn in the kitchen with some more of the family. I'm not sure who they are, so I won't attempt to say names. That's Julie with her grandmas, Sophia and Ruby. Bessie's joining them. Now sitting on the left side of Ruby and Alta. Julie and Bessie sitting on the chairs. Barney looking for a place to sit down to eat. Evelyn and Ross. We're in Salina, Utah. I believe this is Bonnie's grandchild, Brady. Here's Aunt Bonnie. Vivian. Going into Vivian's place. We now have Vivian driving the car that Julie's filming from. She's filming her father, Frank, in the Jeep behind them. Vivian and Jenny Lou trying to get out of the way of Julie filming her. This is Scott with a pistol that he just purchased. They are at a family dinner with Bob and Oma and their children at Vivian's home. Frank not enjoying the light from the camera. Jenny Lou and Vivian. Scott. Frank and Robin on the couch. Bob, Oma, and Christine. Robin and Danny on the couch, and Frank. Good looking wig, Bob. Frank with Christine. And Vivian. Jenny Lou, Robin and Danny getting into some kind of mischief. I think Jenny Lou is the ringleader here. Robin and Danny picking on... Excuse me, that was Robin and Jenny Lou picking on Danny. The family dog was Pedro. Robin trying to play innocent. Danny. We are now driving along the highway coming from Milford, I believe. Frank has gone there to pick Julie up to bring her home for the holidays. So she's filming their ride home. Of course, there's a good profile shot of Frank. Frank out doing his farming on his Caterpillar. This is how you would see him most of the time. He'd have a towel on the back of his neck to keep the flies and gnats and the dirt off of his neck and the sun. Taking time out to visit with Julie and her husband Ross at that time. Oma and Joe as a baby. Bob coming home. Cy and Christine. Bob looks like he's having a little bit of trouble with his motorcycle. Christine and Bob showing off his family pet. We are now at Christmas get-together. This is Sean, Scott's first wife's son by a previous marriage. That's Barbara, Scott's first wife. Robin and Joe. No, that's Sean, excuse me. Sean. Scott. Scott with Cy and Christine. Sean coming to join the group. Robin. Bob. Barbara and Scott. Alma putting some toys in a box. Sean checking out some of the toys that Alma's putting away from Christmas. It's Barbara, Bob, Jenny Lou getting up to leave the room, Barbara and Scott, that's the kids eating with Robin, Jenny Lou, and a Navajo girl that lived with Bob and Alma during the school year. They had quite a few of the foster children, and Danny. Bob and Alma, Scott, Sean and Barbara, Christine and Cy, Vivian, and Frank with his back towards us. The baby is Joe Nick. This is the Ross and Trish Bumgarner family arriving. Ross holding Jennifer, and there's Cal and Amber and Trish. Robin, Ross, Jennifer, Cal, Amber and her mother, Trish. Ross and Cal. Jenny Lou holding Jennifer. Grandma Ruby, Vivian's mother. Cy, Robin, and Danny. I believe we have Rosalind and her husband Kent and their children, and there's Aunt Bonnie, Vivian's sister. That's Rosalind and her husband Kent. There's Uncle Joe, Bonnie's husband, Frank. Rosalind and Kent on the couch.
I would wake when dawn would, living in Christmas Day heaven. Precious moments and special people
Aunt Bonnie, Vivian's younger sister. Sean. They're at Fish Lake for their family reunion and picnic.
Did you bring the sandwiches?
Yes, I brought the sandwiches.
Did you bring the salad?
Yes, I brought the salad.
Ready for a picnic? Here we go. Going on a picnic, leaving right away. If it doesn't rain, we'll stay all day. Did you bring the melon?
Yes, I brought the melon.
Did you bring the apples?
Yes, I brought the apples.
Did you bring the
Barbara, Sean, and Scott.
Did you bring the cookies?
Yes, I brought the cookies.
Ready for a picnic? Here we go. Going on a picnic, leaving right away. If it doesn't rain,
Coming out of the Fish Lake Lodge.
going on a picnic, leaving right away. If it doesn't rain, we'll stay all day. Going on
Julie, Sean, and Barbara. Scott and his cousin Rodney, Aunt Bonnie. I believe that's John on the very left-hand side of the picture, Niles' his son. Grandma Ruby. Niles. And there goes Bob. Niles and his son John. That's Bonnie with the scarf on. Alta with the sweater over her shoulders. Uncle Joe putting a sweater on Aunt Bonnie. Rodney. Grandma Ruby. John and Jenny Lou joining the gathering. Scott checking out Robin's fish. Nice catch, Robin.
I am very proud of me. I think I will sing out loud of me.
That was Vivian and her brother Niles having a leg kicking contest.
Because I am so special. Yes, I do have pride in me. I love every bright blue side of me. I feel so satisfied.
That's Frank telling one of his stories to Alta and everyone.
P-R-I-D-E spells pride. That is P-R-I-D-E. Pride is the feeling of feeling good about me. About me. Yes, indeed, I please myself.
I think that's Joe, Nick, and Sean.
My fingers, my toes, my knees, myself. I hug and kiss and squeeze myself because I am so special. I seldom have a doubt of me. I love every in and out of me.
Bob showing one of the kids how to fish. Ginny Lou and John Powell. After the big picnic, everyone decided to take a nap, and that's Niles and Alta, Bonnie and Joe.
Think it's just my style. Everywhere I go, telling everyone I know, baby, I
Grandma
love to
Ruby.
see you smile. Don't want to take a trip to China. Don't want to sail up tonight. Wouldn't want to get too far.
Niles and Alta.
'Cause I love to see you smile.
Vivian and Joe Nick. Vivian and Frank's in Richville, and that's Sean. Scott and Barbara's son riding the tricycle. Scott's mowing the lawn, and for some reason, when I copied Julie's video, it was at this speed, and I'll try to slow it down with my VCR to let you see a little better. So here we are slowing it down. Scott mowing the lawn. There's Vivian again. And Barbara sitting on the step. Taking her turn on the bike. Looks like they had the sillies this day. They all tried to ride the bike and tip over like on one of the popular TV shows at that time, Laugh-In. Scott coming over to Buggy's sister, Jenny Lou. Scott's going to give it a try. Sean. Barbara giving it a try. Julie. Barbara and Sean together. Of course, that's Frank fishing. And that's either John or Dick Powell laying there behind the tree. Jenny Lou when she was carrying Stephen. That's Dick Powell holding Kim when she was a baby. Jenny Lou holding her son Stephen. Jenny Lou holding Kim and Stephen. Kim as a baby. Bob and Oma's kids, Christine, Robin, Danny, Cy. That's Oma that's come over to stand by Bob. Jenny, Loon, Stephen, and Oma, and Vivian coming out the front door. Dick again with Kim, Bob and Christine. That's Barbara talking to Jenny Lou. Looks like Cy and Christine and Bob, Dick and Kim. We're at Julie's and Dick's trailer with Kim and Stephen playing on the floor. Jenny Lou and John.
How do you know, said the old oak tree. I just saw a daffodil dancing with the fairies on the windy hill. Spring is here, said the bright blue sky. How do you know, said the butterfly. I just saw
an Easter egg hunt for Stephen and Kim.
Tiny mouse, how do you know, said the lady in the house. The doors are open and the kids are gone, playing with the fairies all day long.
Over here! Found one! Here, mine!
Back at Julie's home with Cindy playing with the baby lamb, and California at Bessie's. That's her granddaughter Elizabeth. And that's Richard. And that's Bessie and her grandchildren. Movies. Next we'll be showing the 1970s. This is a group shot of when Robin came home from his mission in 1978. This is Maria, or Mary. Frank's young sister was the only member of his family to come see him in 1972. She passed away 4 years later. This is Jenny Lou and Vivian. Jenny Lou and Stephen. Frank. Vivian. Vivian, Frank, and Lois. Alan Lois, his oldest son and wife, were visiting from California. This is about 1976. This is Vivian holding Kim, Julie's first daughter, and her mother Ruby just before she passed away. This is Ruby in her casket. She passed away on August 1st, 1972. Vivian, Bonnie, and Aunt Winona at the gravesite. She was buried in the Salina Cemetery. The rest of these pictures will be of the people attending the gravesite. That's Kay, Bonnie, Vivian, Niles, and Bessie, Ruby's children. Going right to left, Bessie's the oldest, Niles, Vivian, Bonnie, and Kay. That's their age order in the family. It's Mark and Zelda Brown, Jody and Bonnie, and Trish.
To guide your way.
We're back at Robin's Welcome Home again. See if you can pick yourself out. That's Danny and Krista, Bob, Mo, Jody, Trish, Ken, Cy, Scott, Vivian and Frank, Ross, Rodney, Amber, some of the kids. Joe, Jason, Olma, Bonnie, Robin, Cy, and Bob. Danny, Bob, and Robin with Mo in the background. Danny, Bob. Chris, who would marry Robin in just a few more months. Waited for him on his mission with Aunt Mo. Frank, Scott, Jody, and Ken, Mo's husband, Ken. Ross Bumgardner and his wife, Trish. Amber, their daughter. Rodney and his daughter Nicole. Trish. Jenny Lou, LaRue, and Niles. Bob, Julie, Scott, and Jenny Lou, 4 children of Vivian. Frank, who's the father of Scott and Jenny Lou. Scott, LaRue, Frank, Kim, Vivian, and Cindy had a family reunion in 1976. Rodney and Barbara in the background. In about 1977, we rented a houseboat at Lake Powell, the Bumgardners, Scott and myself. We took Bob and Alma's 2 children, Christine and Jonick, and Vivian and Bonnie went along with us, so we had a really fun time, and we're going to play you some excerpts of one evening when we was going to bed that Vivian taped.
Shut up!
That's dog.
Good night, Grandma.
Just think that same moon shining over our grandpa.
Even the half moon.
How do you get a half moon? Yeah, but how do you only show a half moon? When you pull down the joint, you gotta pull one. You can't pull them.
We are now going into the 1980 photographs. This is Frank and Vivian in 1980s. In 1983, Cy left to go on his mission. And this is a family shot of Bob and the family. In the photo is Robin and Chris, Christine holding their son Jake, Robert, Bobby Lou, Alma holding Robin's daughter Jamie, Joe, and Cy. It's Vivian, Niles, Bessie, Bonnie, and Kay, another group shot of Ruby and Torval's children, taken in the 1980s. This is George and Rita Crane. Alta at about 71 years of age. Vivian at 71 years old. Bessie at 76 years old. Kay. And Lamar Nielsen. Next, Frank came to San Jose, where Scott and myself were living, and his brother Antonio flew in from Portugal to visit with the family there in California, and Frank flew up to join in on the visit. So that's Frank and his youngest brother Tony, and Tony's grandson Alvaro, and Frank Jr. sitting on the other side of Alvaro. Scott and Alvaro checking out some of my photo albums. Frank and his oldest son Albert and his wife Lois, who live in Palo Alto, California. Now we're back in Utah, and that's Vivian, Niles, Bonnie, Bessie, and Kay on a trip to Capitol Reef. And this is a picture in 1979 of Scott working on a home he built for us on the Annabelle Road. We're now into the 1990 photos of Vivian's, the last section of her photographs. A group shot of the Andresen family reunion 1993 at Fish Lake. Frank and his great-great-grandchild Danielle. Vivian and Esther, Christine's daughter. Frank and Esther. Jenny Lou and Rodney and Barbara with their backs kind of to us. That's Jenny Lou attending Nicole's wedding in about 1991. Recent picture of Jenny Lou taken by Bobby, 1997. Group shot of the Andresen reunion at Fish Lake in 1992. Hopefully you can recognize most of the people by now. Some of the guys, that's Anthony, Rodney, Ross, Bob, Aaron, and his son, John, I believe. That's Bob. And there we have Bob behind Cal, Cade, Jared, Garney, Ross, and Frank. And this was just a few months before Frank passed away. This is in the fall of 1992. There's Alta, Garney, Vivian sitting on the bench, and I believe that's Niles with his back towards us. Garney, Vivian, Evelyn, and Jenny Lou. Vivian, Evelyn, Jenny Lou. Frank passed away December 21st, 1992, and this is him in his coffin at the age of 94. That's Scott, Vivian, and Bob. Scott and Stephen. Jenny Lou and her son Stephen Powell. Stephen and Jenny Lou. Bob. Bob, Julie, Vivian, Jenny Lou, and Scott. Santos tombstone for Frank and eventually Vivian. In Annabella, Utah. Frank's casket. Garney, Evelyn, Frank, Vivian, Alta, and Niles at the 1992 Andresen reunion. We are now at the 1995 reunion with Kim and Vivian and Scott and Tanya in the background. Bob. We're at Fish Lake. Scott at Navajo Lake near Cedar City. This is Willie Scott, who Scott was named after, and Vivian. Willie was Vivian's best friend growing up and have stayed friends all these years. And this is the last home that Frank and Vivian bought together in Richfield. There's Cody, Tanya, Jenny Lou, and Vivian. 1994 photograph. Cody and Vivian. Jenny Lou, Cy, and Vivian. Jenny Lou, Cy. Vivian, Stacy, Porter, Jenny Lou holding Tony, Bobby Lou, and Danielle. Vivian, Jenny, and Bob. Vivian at the 1995 reunion, Fish Lake, in her pink hat. This is a plate that Frank brought back from the Azores that his mother gave him. And it says, "One day I went to the highest mountain. I looked, I could see nothing greater than save the love of my mother." And it's dated with an apostrophe 72, so that could be 1872. I don't really know. This is a few photographs we found at the end of Bob and Julie, and I'm not sure who this is. And that's Ross, I believe, and Jenny Lou and Scott. This is Torval and Ruby. This is Julie holding Jenny Lou. These were off of some negatives I found that were oversized, and I couldn't get places to develop them, so I tried with my camera and came out with these shots. This is Jody, Bonnie, Ruby, Torval. And I'm not sure who the two people on the end were. And this is Scott and Jenny Lou with a little puppy. And that's Rodney with, I'm not sure who must be one of his cousins. That's Ruby, Scott, and Torval. Ross, Scott, Rodney, and Julie. Ross has always loved pigeons and birds, so these are probably some that he had. That's Ross, Rodney kissing Scott and Julie. It looks like Jenny Lou when she's a baby.